Hi, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar, How to Scale Your Business, brought to you by Pest Management Professional Magazine and our sponsor of the event, FieldRoots. FieldRoots is a cloud-based and mobile SaaS provider for field service businesses. The platform automates all aspects of field service operations for enterprise and small business customers that span office management, advanced route optimization, payment processing, digital sales, marketing, and customer acquisition solutions that accelerate growth, streamline operations, increase customer retention, and maximize revenue. Before we get started, I want to let you know that today's webinar will be recorded. You are currently in a listen-only mode. A recording of this webinar will be posted to mypmp.net/webinars and will also be emailed to you tomorrow. Other upcoming webinars will also be posted to this page. Please notice the Q&A panel at the lower left-hand side of your console. If you have a question, type it into the panel's text box, then click Submit to place your question in queue. We encourage you to ask and enter any questions you may have for our speakers during their presentation. We will address these questions at the end of the presentation during the Q&A portion. Questions submitted during registration have already gone to our panelists and may be covered during today's presentation. If you experience any technical difficulties during today's event, you may use the same Q&A panel on your screen to submit your issue, and technical support specialist Ellen Wagner or I will personally assist you. You may learn more about our speakers by viewing their photo, bio, and email address in the panel located on the upper left-hand side of your console. If you are logged into your social media accounts, you can share the webinar's title, description, and URL with your friends or colleagues using the Share This Experience you will see at the right corner of your screen. Finally, the Resources panel hosts the slides for today's presentation, which you may download, as well as links to both PMP and FieldRoots websites. I'm Mackenzie Shoemaker from North Coast Media, Content Marketing Project Manager for Pest Management Professional Magazine, and I will be your moderator for today's event. Today, we will be hearing from Greg C., Tom Miché, and Aaron Rafua. Greg is the Operations Service Manager for Pointe Pest Control, a top 100 pest control company serving 4 states across the Pacific Northwest, and is in charge of hiring, developing, coaching, licensing, and servicing across 11 locations. Tom is president and founder of Miché Pest Control, a top-rated, family-owned and operated pest control company serving Washington, D.C., Maryland, and Northern Virginia. And Aaron is FieldRoots Associate Manager of Sales and has been with the company for 6 years. During his time, he has helped hundreds of field service businesses realize the benefits of the time-saving solutions FieldRoots offers. During today's presentation, Greg and Tom will talk about how they use FieldRoots and how it has helped their respective companies, and Aaron will give us a brief look into FieldRoots. Jumping right in, how long have you both been in the pest control industry?
So I've been in the pest control industry since 2010 in April, so it's been about 12 years now.
Great. And Greg, how long have you been in the industry?
I've been in the industry since October 2011, so also about 10 years.
Great. What are your roles within the company?
I am the service operations manager, and just to give some size and scope of what that means, we have about 200 general pest control technicians and about 20 specialty pest technicians, and that's in 11 branches in 4 states. And so there's always a lot going on.
What I do is I'm the president, so I focus on marketing, advertising, and just supporting the operations team at Miché Pest Control.
That sounds a lot funner, Tom. Maybe I should
slide
into that kind of a role.
I feel like I've done at least some of your role. I don't know if I got quite to that scope working for other companies in the past, but I do kind of enjoy mine a little bit better now. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, you have a good history in the industry.
Thank you. But I'm not an ace like you are.
But that's a AKA bookworm.
Associate, right? Certified entomologist.
Yep.
Okay, great. How long have you been using Field Routes?
We started using field routes in 2015, and it's funny thinking back about that experience. Field routes had about 5 employees back then, and we converted. At that time, we had 5 branches, and so we converted 1 branch at a time for 5 months in a row during that summer. So that was a fun process.
During the summer. You did that
during the summer. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yep. I have a little bit of PTSD about it, but that's because we had other stuff going on. It wasn't because of converting the software. The software was really user friendly to use, so that part was good.
My hat's off to you. That I don't know if I could handle a task of that magnitude. Just crazy. I went from a DOS-based system working for a different company to switching to field routes in fall of 2016. I changed companies at the time, so I was learning a new company, and it was a lot simpler. Anyone who's used a DOS-based system for pest control can probably agree with me. I like it way better. Hands down.
Okay, awesome. Can you talk about how using Field Routes has helped your routing efficiency?
It's kind of hard to compare because the people that we have routing all of our technicians now have not used a different software. So this is all they know. But there was a day when I was hired in the industry, that was one of the first tasks I had. I was routing 6 technicians back in the day, and it was a little messy. Part because of the software, and part because the routes weren't real dense yet. But the features that we use, like the visual grouping, I talked to one of our main more experienced routers recently about this, and she just gave me a few words or features that she couldn't live without. And maybe Tom could explain or expound more about that or whatever. But she said having the tabs to be able to separate the technicians in groups, and advanced view, visual grouping, and route builder, those were all features that she couldn't live without.
Yeah. So having been in it, doing it, using it for a while now, I will absolutely agree with her. Route groups, absolutely essential. Lets you keep things really organized. Just having a map view, which sounds so basic, but I've used softwares where it didn't really have a map view of all the routes. So being able to see everything on a day, and using advanced view, you can look at multiple days next to each other, and it's all color coded, easy to use. You can do it by technician, you can do it by day of the week, you can do it a number of different ways. And then as far as being efficient with recurring services, using the visual groupings to assign route regions and preferred technicians, the intelligent routing feature I really like, and I know a lot of people use the job pool function very successfully in order to keep things nice and tight on the routes.
Okay. How has your route density been impacted since using field routes?
Route density is every technician's dream. They want the maximum amount of jobs in the smallest area. And I guess too, right? So that things are more efficient. They can do more paid stops per day. In the variety of branches that we have, some are in metro areas and some are in rural areas. And I think it's easy with the amount of routes that we have, the amount of job types that we have, it's easy to have some blurred lines and some technicians in the same area that, one person could have handled it all. And so we do a process called route enhancing every day. We look at the routes for the next day and we do some tweaks and talk to our service managers and our technicians about what they can handle or if they can pick this other one up for this other person or whatever. But having the tools to be able to do that is huge, because at the end of the day, it's better for everybody. I don't know if you have a similar process on that, Tom, or maybe any tips or tricks on making things dense.
Yeah, so there's a lot of things you can do to make routes nice and dense, and Field Routes has a ton of tools to make that happen. Obviously, the map view helps, but one of the big things that I like is the Field Routes sales app. You can look at a map of all your active and inactive customers, for that matter. You can filter it either way. You can go to an area and flyer. You can go to an area and just knock the doors of the neighbors of the customers you already have. It'll highlight any 5-star reviews that those people have left. So you can really hone in on a specific geography and really take over. And that's without even involving any third-party marketing stuff. There's a lot you can do with custom audiences, lookalike audiences, to really focus in on an area, and the data is easy to access. You can export it and use it from Field Routes.
Tom, I've seen the Sales Routes app. We use it. I personally don't use it every day in my role, so I'm lightly familiar with it. But did you say that, like, I'm familiar with seeing current customers and old customers on it, but it also has, if you can see if they've left reviews for us on that app?
Yeah, so there are different colored stars on that app based on whether they're active, inactive, or have left a 5-star review through the internal Field Routes platform. So I know you do a lot of your review generation, I think, on Google, but any of the ones that sneak their way through internally using Field Routes system, it'll show those reviews on the sales app.
Oh, I see. So they're the internal software reviews, not ones that get funneled through Google. Okay, got it. That makes sense.
Yep.
Cool. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah, I like it.
Okay. How has Field Routes impacted your customer acquisition and retention?
Yeah, that's a good segue. I think for customer acquisition, we started using the Sales Routes app around 2018. So we used Field Routes for 3 years without using Sales Routes. And now that we use Sales Routes and digital contracts, and a sales rep can fill out an agreement and schedule that job for a technician all with the all in one setting, and it's made that process so smooth. If we had to go back to paper contracts and call in the office looking for a time on when we could fit that in, and that'd be awful. That would make me throw up in my mouth a little bit. So that process has been amazing as far as the acquisition process. And then the retention, of course, there's, reports. You can stay on top of retention, but I'll probably maybe save that for, I think that's a question we're going to do later, is about reports. But sales routes and that acquisition process has been amazing.
Totally agree. We have a good chunk of door-to-door customers, and the sales routes, or the field route sales app is just really good. If it's not the best, it's at least one of the best for that. And since it integrates straight into the CRM where all the customer data is managed, it simplifies a lot of the processes where you can cut out entire roles at companies where you don't have to have someone that manually puts in customer information from a paper contract the night before the next day's service when those door-to-door reps are out knocking doors. That was huge. But another thing Field Routes has done to help with customer acquisition is I have buy online set up through the website. They go straight onto the website, click around, find the information they're looking for, and it's super easy for them to fill out their information, and they can actually schedule themselves and pay for it all online. And the customer is directly uploaded into Pest Routes, and they land on the schedule in a spot that makes sense. So it's a completely hands-free customer acquisition. I think that's extremely powerful.
That's pretty amazing. Yeah. Was that easy to set up, or did you have some painful moments at the beginning of that? But we don't have that.
There's some work that goes into it on the setup side when you're setting up, I'll just call them deals, the deals that people can buy and the scheduling abilities. There's a lot of constraints. There's a lot of control that you have. I can set areas that I do and don't want to do. I can do different pricing in different areas. For example, if there's taxes that apply in one area that don't in another, and I need to just have different pricing in different geographies, there's a lot of control allowed when you're setting that up. But the greater the degree of detail that's in there, which I like the amount of detail that's there, the better control you have to control that. I also use, I mentioned it a little bit ago, custom and lookalike audience data from Field Routes exports.
Yeah.
I can find customers that are the most like my existing customers by doing custom audiences and lookalike audiences. And if a customer has pest control but not termite, I can serve them digital ads for a very low cost. There's a lot you can do just by segmenting your customer data and creating lookalike audiences that way too.
Interesting. Yeah.
That's awesome. How many referrals have you acquired since using Field Routes?
I don't even know a number. Thousands, tens of thousands. And well, really, I guess I'm thinking of, I think we rely on Google to be our reputation, I think, online. But we use the Field Routes, that link that goes to a service ticket. When a customer clicks that to give us feedback, that directs them to our website. And then on our website, it asks them to select what location they're in. And then it sends them to leave us a Google review for that location. So we kind of we married up our Google and our Field Routes software or whatever. And we drive that a lot. Our goal is to have the most reviews from not just any pest control company in our area, but the most reviews from any service company in our area. And it's that's been a huge huge thing for us. Driving Google reviews and using that software helps make it easier.
Absolutely. We do the same thing. We're not nearly the size that Pointe is, but we definitely have the link that goes out on the service tickets leading to those places. We actually set up a trigger rule to text each customer when the service is marked complete, and they have a link leading to a specific Google location based on where they're at in our service area, so we can get them to the most appropriate Google My Business page. And we've had really good success with that. Yeah,
I love that.
And customer flags and texts.
Do you have different links and different trigger rules set up for each area or whatever? How do you do that so they get the right link in their trigger rule text?
So I set it up using customer flags based on location, and then I have a different trigger rule based on the flag that they have. I have a different trigger rule for each flag, and then they'll get the specific link based on the flag that's on the account, which you can assign pretty easily flags based on location. It's just like a once a month, once every couple weeks update to make sure you add the flags. Very quick, easy process.
Interesting. And maybe we should save some of this commentary for the trigger rule question, but I love the trigger rules, and I know that we're underutilizing it, but I know it's an amazing deal. So I guess I'll hold that for that question.
Sounds good.
Okay. Can you talk on the benefits of having live data?
For me, it's a similar scenario for like how sales routes and digital contracts, and how a sales rep could just schedule his own job super easy. And if I had to go back to the old way, I would want to like throw up in my mouth. That's the same thing. If we didn't have live data, I would want to throw up my mouth. Can you imagine having to call your technician and ask them where they're at in their day? How many stops have they done? When will they get to Susie's house? About and both sides. So the office knows where the technicians are in their day, and the technicians know where that account is historically. How many services have they had? What was done last time? What is on the notes to look for this time? All that live data is, I couldn't imagine living in this industry without live data.
Definitely. And I look at the dashboard on a daily basis, able to drill down and look at all of the data. It's easily packaged so that you can look at some critical performance data at a glance, but then whenever something looks like it's not quite right, you're able to really deep dive into individuals' performance, company performance, whatever you're looking into. There's a lot of ability to just go in and really get into the weeds on it, which it cannot be understated, the value of doing that, being able to do that.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay. Switching veins a little bit, how has training new technicians on field routes gone for you both?
I just had a flashback from when we switched from our other software to it was Pest Routes at the time in 2015, but to Field Routes. And I remember, this is just a funny story. I remember telling the technicians, I'm like, when you fill out the notes, I don't want it to look like a fifth grader is texting their friend. I want the notes to look professional and use punctuation. And so and that hasn't changed, right? Because we have people that grow up with cell phones in their hands, basically. And but because of that, they intuitively know how to use that app. It's like learning a new app for somebody nowadays is super simple. And Field Routes has done a good job of making adjustments in the app to make it more congruent towards normal what normal apps look like. And so there's always a few details, like somebody didn't know you can hit the button to text on the way or whatever, right? But by and large, teaching technicians how to use the Field Routes app is pretty simple.
I agree. It's having learned how to use other apps and then going to this one. It's just so simple and easy. There's a couple fairly recurrent issues that you just address during training, and it's super, super easy, super simple. I love it. Even the technologically impaired people that we hire sometimes, they get it.
Yep.
And everyone can think of one or two of those, I'm sure.
Yep.
Okay. Next question. Can you talk on how you've employed the automatic billing feature?
I might relate or give my time to this one to Tom. I don't want to sound out of touch, but I don't do a lot of the billing in my role. But when I asked our office, they said we do have about 70% of our customer base is on APay, and but I don't know how to set that up or tweak it, or, whatever. That's not part of my lane here, I guess.
Okay. So what's really nice, invoices automatically generate for anything you're doing. I've used software in the past where you had to complete a service ticket, then someone else would review it and then create an invoice and send it. Invoices automatically generate. I haven't had to even think about that for 6 years now.
I forgot about that. Yep, you're right.
And it's both for services and subscriptions. So whether you're doing annual, monthly, or per service billing, it all just automatically generates. Super easy. I think they have their own internal trigger rule or something to generate them. Whatever they're doing, it works great. And we are 80% monthly billing, and it's 80% credit card auto pay. And then if a payment fails, they automatically get an email. If it goes a certain number of days past due, I have a bunch of trigger rules set up for accounts receivable. So they get reminders with links in order to update their information. So it's super low energy on my end, but we have a very high level of automatic billing. It's really nice.
That's awesome.
Okay, great. Jumping back to those trigger rules, what are some of the ways that you guys use these?
Oh man, but I love trigger rules, and but on the other hand, now that I know how dynamic they can be, I know that we're underutilizing them. So I'm a little bit excited to hear what Tom has to say about these.
Okay.
The first time I really remember using trigger rules was when COVID started, and I was concerned about the impacts that was going to have on our business. And we do door-to-door sales program, and we had a delayed start that year. They usually start in April. COVID really hit America and the businesses in a big way in March of that year. And I think we started knocking in May, maybe, or June instead of April. I don't remember the exact details. But anyway, when we started selling, or I set up a trigger rule to text my phone when an account got sold, because I wanted to see if the volume was going to be there because I just had a little bit of stress about how that was going to impact our business. And when my phone lit up like a Christmas tree every day, like it normally would, it was business as usual as far as sales goes. I was like, oh, that is amazing. And then of course I turned that off right away because I didn't want my phone to buzz every time I sold something. But now we use it more internally. So if say a termite job gets sold and I want the termite supervisor to know to be ready for that job next week or whatever. This part of the country, we don't. That's a once a week type job or twice a week type job, not a normal everyday job. Or if the person that's in charge of roaches wants to know when a reservice gets scheduled because they want to be in tune with that or whatever. We set up trigger rules for job types and supervisors and stuff, but we don't have trigger rules currently active for our customer base. But I know there's a wealth of things that you can do with that, and I'm interested, Tom, in hearing about how you do that.
Yeah. So we have used some employee-facing stuff in the past. Like you, I wanted to know every time a door-to-door rep sold something, and I also quickly turned that off.
Yeah.
It gets old, especially when it's the later, like 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock deals. Don't need that. But the bulk of ours are actually customer-facing. So we do accounts receivable every 10 days, and there's a little bit more color in there, but you can do text messages, emails. We do some snail mail that way. Especially where there's some people that prefers a paper invoice. Like there's some people who just want it to be mailed to them no matter what. You can create a trigger rule specifically for them so they get an invoice sent right away instead of waiting the normal, say, 30 days or whatever you would consider doing that. We do it for accounts receivable. We do it for termite renewals specifically, because termite with an annual frequency on per service billing especially, people can move and they just don't think to tell you. So we want to get it to the new homeowner if we can. Just a thing saying, hey, your renewal's due no later than this date. Please call us. And we've gotten a lot better renewal rate using, for example, snail mail to the termite renewals beforehand, like a couple months before. We use it for appointment reminders. We do texts and emails a few days out. You can control when those go out with the customer communication settings so they don't get the text too early in the day or the email too early in the day. There's a lot of control that you can do for that. I mentioned our review generation. Every time the appointment's completed, customers get a text asking how we did, having a link to leave a review, and just setting the right expectations. Bugs aren't instantly gone. It'll take a little bit. If you're still having issues after a couple weeks, please tell us. And I use that to send out welcome letters as well. Whenever a new customer signs up, gets a service with us, they get a welcome email.
That was a lot. That could be its own webinar right there. There could be a trigger rules webinar.
If people want me to do it, I'm happy to talk about it.
It's kind of intimidating to set them up if you don't know how they work, right? Because you don't want the customers to get the wrong email or the wrong message, whatever.
Right.
Yeah.
I was definitely intimidated as I was doing it, so I tested it. Create a test flag, stick it on an account with your name and number. Just do it all that way. That's how I learned it, and I screwed some up pretty bad, but we're good now.
Yep, perfect.
All right, awesome. What reports do you use in Field Routes?
Oh man, now we're talking my world. Reports. my world revolves around a calendar and spreadsheets, and really really good people. So I run technician reservices, of course. I'm sure every company does that. I funnel that into Excel, and then I have their profile set up with some nomenclature on the name so that I can auto sort the technician's role, and so then I can know, I can stack rank technicians by their role. So all my guys that are paid per job, I know what their reservice rates are, and all the guys that I pay hourly, I know what their reservice rates are. When technicians travel to different branches for us, I know what their reservice rates are, and it's been really helpful. And then the technicians know where they stand with the technicians in their branch, and their branch knows where they stand against the same technicians in a different branch. And then hot sheets is a big one for us. Well, sorry, that's not a field routes term. Hot sheets is what we post it every Monday. It's for our specialty pest jobs. So, for example, right now we have 100 active roach jobs, German roach jobs, and we try to solve a roach job in 3 visits. And I just looked at our hot sheets that we posted on Monday, and we have 5 of the 100 that have had more than 3 visits. They've had a 4th visit or a 5th visit. And so it helps it kind of flags it for our supervisors to just jump on those tough accounts and solve them before they get out of hand, before the CSRs set up like a 6th or 7th visit, so we can jump on it right away. Same day reports. I export a report that has a sold date and a service date on it, and then I subtract the service date from the sold date, and so then I know how many days it took for the service to happen from the date it was sold. And we want 80% of our new accounts to be serviced in a 72-hour window, the same day, the next day, or the second day. And so we run that every day. And then our production versus hours work. I merge a production report from field routes with an hourly report from our HR software, and then I kind of stack rank technicians by, I know their route density that way, by how many hours it took them to produce so much production, all sorts of numbers from that. And then of course there's the customer, retention reports. Like we want to give every new customer a phone call. So we'll run a report for all the initial services that were just recently done. Then we'll call those customers, or any reservices that were done, we'll call them and be like, hey, is the problem solved? Is life good for you now? Those are kind of the big reports that I run, that I prefer. And I'm sure Tom has his own list, and I'm sure as soon as you give me your list, Tom, I'm going to have questions for you about them, just because like I'm that nerdy kind of guy. I could jump on a webinar that's just based around reports.
You're welcome to ask me about any of them. Anyone that wants to is welcome to ask me about any of them. I use the sales report a lot. That's one of the ones that I use that specifically for the sold date, service date, the same day report that you're talking about. Yeah. I use it for a lot of other things as well, but there's a lot of good stuff that I use, like high value information in the sales report. So I use that one pretty regularly. For customer retention, I typically use the subscription cancellation report. There's I feel like there's more information in that one than some of the other. There's like 3, I think, different cancel reports. So I like the subscription cancellation one best. Obviously, the technician reservices, I don't think any operations manager could live without.
Right.
And
right.
I actually use billing by service type a lot.
Yep.
Especially when I was newer as a company. It helped me get a really good bead on revenue from different sources, because it's not just service type that you can filter the information by. You can filter it by almost anything you can imagine in the billing by service type report.
I love that report.
It's very, very good. And then the monthly services report. You got to know how ahead or behind you are on servicing when you're in a service-based industry. And the monthly services report is what I use for that.
Is that on the dashboard? Is that a dashboard widget?
It is a dashboard widget. You can go into it from the reporting section as well. And then there's a lot of filters that you can adjust. So if you want to do where you're at on like a trailing 30 days or trailing 1 month basis instead of just month to date, you can do that. If you're trying to run a week ahead, then you can do it based on, for example, dates a week ahead of today. There's a lot of flexibility in that and a lot of control in the way that you're tracking your production as far as completions go.
Yeah. I like it.
Those are the main ones that I use.
Okay. Thank you guys so much for that great info. Before we jump into Q&A that we got during registration and some that came in during the webinar, we're going to pass it off to Aaron, who's going to tell us a little bit more about field routes.
Cool. All right. So do we have this slide with the pie charts pulled up? Oh, here we go. Cool. All right. So we were touching up a bit on the dashboard and really just want to highlight one graph on the dashboard that companies really like. And that graph would be the monthly services graph. And so up at the top, we have just a quick, snapshot. And there are other graphs as well, but you can see there's a monthly services graph over here. And this is a graph that companies really like because we've eliminated a pretty big problem in the industry, which a lot of companies face, which are customers falling through the cracks. And so what I mean by that is I'm speaking with companies on a near daily basis who will let me know, hey, I had someone who was due maybe a couple days ago. It could have been for any kind of, monthly, quarterly, some kind of a service where that customer was due, and for whatever reason, they weren't serviced. And so next thing you know, that customer may not be serviced until their next service is due. So you essentially have a lot of these companies out there in the industry who are missing out on revenue. And then the customer may not exactly be sure what's going on either. And so this really isn't a person problem. A lot of the times it comes down to a software thing. And so with this graph over here, this monthly services graph, you can see your customers who are overdue, unscheduled, scheduled, and then that little green sliver is also your completed services as well. And so with this dashboard, you can actually click into any single one of these graphs, which we're looking at over here. And there are other graphs as well. This is just a quick snapshot of the top portion. You can actually click into any single one of these graphs and you can dive into the details as well. And so, for example, if you were to click into the overdue or unscheduled section, it'll pull up a detailed list, which also feeds into this thing called the job pool, which we've got as well. And so the job pool, this is just one tool that a lot of companies are able to use when it comes to scheduling. There are many different ways you're able to do your scheduling and routing in the system. This is just one of those ways where the monthly services graph does feed into the job pool as well. And so with the job pool over here, these would be customers who are unscheduled, who need to be scheduled onto the calendar. And so from here, for example, you have many different filters as well. So you can choose a date range of your customers that are due for service. And you have dozens of filters you can choose from. So for example, if you want to choose a specific type of service or technician or zip code or city, then you're able to really narrow this list down. But tying this back into the idea of eliminating a problem of customers falling through the cracks is that if you had someone who was due a couple days ago and they weren't scheduled onto the calendar, then you would also see them in this job pool over here. So if we're looking down, we can see that we have a customer with balance that's due. And also if there's a balance that's due, you might know, okay, maybe we should collect the money before we go out there and service this customer again. We can see the type of service that needs to be done. And then you can see the original due date for that customer as well to the very right, along with the amount of days in which they might be due for service or past due as well. And so, yeah, just wanted to quickly highlight this problem that a lot of companies face. And this is how you're able to work with that in field routes, is really through this monthly services graph. So that way company will know, okay, this is where we're at for the month. And then if you're wanting to get a more detailed report, see exactly who these customers are, where these numbers are coming from, you can always click into the graph. And then you also have this thing called the job pool as well, where you'd be able to see any of your customers who might be overdue or who need to be scheduled onto the calendar as well. And that's a high-level overview of what I have to cover today. So back to you, Mackenzie.
Awesome. Thanks so much. All right. At this time, we're going to jump into some questions we received during registration and a couple we got during the presentation. My first question, how are you acquiring the majority of your customers?
Well, that's a good question. Just generally, I would say it's like probably 50% of our customers are 50-50 through door-to-door sales and online reviews and marketing. And then there's a sliver in there of like customers that have canceled before and then come back to us, or I can't remember what the other small segment was, but a bulk of it is through door-to-door. Yeah. Oh yeah. Yep. Current customer referrals. Yep. But a bulk of it is door-to-door and online marketing.
Okay. Ours are about 30% door-to-door, 30% online, like through the website, Google My Business, stuff that puts traffic through the website. We do about 30% through lead generators, things like Thumbtack, Yelp, Home Advisor, and then another 10% are going to be our, like, people saw the truck, the customer referrals, that type of stuff.
Okay,
awesome. Do you have a decent amount, Tom? Sorry. Do you have a decent amount, Tom, on the, what is it called? That where they buy online?
Lead generators.
Yeah.
Buy online, yeah, we have a good chunk of that. And one of the surprising ones more recently, where they started importing the customer information for people that start the checkout process and then don't complete it. And
okay.
We're able to follow up on those, and we're actually closing a good chunk of those ones too, where they started to get a quote, bailed. We're just collecting more of those, getting them the rest of the way down that funnel.
Nice.
Yeah. Those are included in my online section. So about 30% of our customer base comes from the website, buy online, lead form, that kind of stuff.
Gotcha.
Okay, perfect. How often is it okay to send SMS or email marketing messages?
That's a great question. I, I think we're a little adverse to it. I don't think that we do that very much, if at all. Rarely. I would say we rarely do it.
What I've found is like 10 to 20 emails a month is like ideal. And there's some online research to support that. You do less than that, and it's hard to get a good sense of that. Part of the thing that sells people is repetition, just catching them at the right time. So if you're able to keep it consistent without going overboard, that works pretty well. And I find that 10 to 20 a month, let's say couple a week plus, is good. Texting I would do much less. As a pest control company, I would do 1 or 2 a month. But truthfully, we don't do any SMS at the moment for marketing.
Okay. Our next question, how do you use the routing tools of, do you use the routing tools of field routes on a daily basis, or is there someone in your company who does that?
We do. We use our routing tools every day. I personally do not, but we have people that's their job. They just do routes all day, every day.
At your size, you have to.
Yeah.
When I started, it was me on the daily basis, and then I was able to start delegating that. So at this point, other people in the company do that, but I started doing that. So I'm very familiar with the tools.
Okay. Can you summarize how you both use field routes day to day in your respective companies?
How I personally use field routes every day? Is that the question? I look at more broad scope stuff like reports, gather information, and then call managers or supervisors and go, hey, tell me about this or that or whatever. So it's more of a surface level look. So then I can call people and dive in deeper on conversations. But it's mainly those reports I talked about of the hot sheets, if certain accounts are having too many services or same day reports, do we have enough technicians to handle the volume that's coming in? Production versus hours worked, is our routes density set up, stuff like that.
Yeah, I'm not much more than that at this point. I try and focus more on the reporting. There's a couple things I do on the day-to-day basis. We do some double checks on stuff every day. I haven't delegated all of those yet, but for the most part, it's reporting, pulling the information that I want, making a couple decisions based on it, and that's it. So much of it's automatic, I don't need to.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Okay. Do either of you have a story about how field routes has helped you in a sticky situation or helped you solve a problem?
Ooh. Yeah. I'm willing to bet Greg has some better ones. I think he can go first.
Your story might spark a story for me.
Ooh. Okay. So, helped me in a sticky situation. I mean, over the last 6 years, there's been a lot of opportunity for it, but I've used it to figure out that people were just sitting on their couch at home marking a bunch of services complete because you can tell what time people do things. I've used it to find trucks that were left in the middle of nowhere because people got ragey and quit and didn't say anything, just left the truck in the middle of nowhere. There's, man, I've used it for so many things.
Those were really good examples. I would also, I would add to that. We've been in court a couple times over services like bed bug services with like apartment complexes or stuff like that, and really good documentation has saved us every time. And so when our technicians put what conditions the place was like when we arrived, took pictures, load pictures in the account, what we did exactly when we were there, what we recommend that they do in the meantime, all those things are housed in the software and easily gathered when you have to explain those types of things to property managers or lawyers or whatever.
Definitely.
Great. I'm glad that they helped. This question is more targeted for Aaron. How can PMPs watching this webinar get trainings on how to use trigger rules and like what trigger rules there are?
Yeah, definitely. So if for companies who might be looking into wanting to get started with field routes, we're not going to throw companies into the system trying to figure things out on their own. If we have a company get started, we have a very set training process in place so that we would have a specialist assigned to the company. So that's specific to the way they want to run their business and set up trigger rules and learn more best practices on how companies use trigger rules. And that would be an available resource. On top of that, there are written guides and videos as well in the system. So we have this thing called a help wizard in the software, and that is a great resource, great tool to learn more about any kind of the features that we've got. And so we will have some guides written on how to use trigger rules as needed. But we also do have our support team in-house as well. So if there's ever any kind of question, feel free to reach out and we can walk through how you'd be able to get something set up as needed as well.
Okay, awesome. We have time for one more question. So how do you check if the zip code is in your area of service? And then how do you prepare the CSR with service descriptions when asked what the technicians do?
For us, we use Google Maps, and we have areas drawn out. And then if somebody calls in and they're wondering if they're in our service area, we'll punch in the address, and it'll either be in our area or not in our area. And then for the CSRs, I think we just have a document that describes what each service type is. I don't know if I answered the question very well, but based off what I gather from the question, that's how we do those. How about you, Tom?
Yeah, there's a couple ways we do it. One, we have a zip code list. So that should help. If someone has a zip code ready to go, we can punch it in. More often than not, they'll say a city. We usually just use the map to figure out if the city is in or outside of a certain county. And we have a county list, which is easy. We have like 18 counties that we service, so it's hard to keep track of all of that and have everyone remember all of it, especially where our CSRs are 100% remote at this point. So not all of them are even familiar with our service area. Plugging it into the county seems to be the simplest, easiest way for us. And we have some pre-planned services that we offer with a description for each one, easily available for the CSRs to be able to answer those questions.
Okay, thank you guys so much. Unfortunately, that is all the time we have. But if you have further questions for our speakers, feel free to email them using the emails located in their bios. And again, thank you so much for attending today's webinar, How to Scale Your Business, brought to you by Pest Management Professional Magazine and our sponsor of the event, Field Roots. Like I said at the beginning of the webinar, the resources panel houses a PDF of today's presentation slides, which you can download. Thank you all for attending, and we hope you'll join us for another great webinar.